We're going to take a seat, if you would. Go ahead and grab your Bibles. We're going to continue with this heart of worship before the throne into Matthew 25. So if you grab your Bibles and turn to Matthew 25, we're going to continue our series as we're going through the book of Matthew. So we got this week and next week, and then February we'll start a new series that we've called For Such a Time as This. So we're looking at the history of the church from the beginning, from Acts, and how for this time, right now in 2024, God has chosen to put us here with these people doing this very thing. So we'll do that in February, but let's get into Matthew chapter 25 this morning. On the screen, thanks, Joel. On the screen will be the scriptures I'm going to use this morning. We're going to spend the bulk of the time in Matthew 25. We've got two parables to cover, two of which that I think you'll probably be familiar with, but in context, I think they're going to carry, I think, a little bit of a different weight for us here this morning. Last week, Meredith went to be with her mom. Her mom had hip replacement surgery, and her dad is partially paralyzed on one side, so she went to help and stay at the hospital with her mom and went through all that. And so she was coming back Thursday, and I decided that I was going to clean the house, just vacuum and clean the house for her return, because I knew she was coming at an hour that I did not expect. And so I was going to be prepared for her return. But you know how it is when you clean the house with kids, you got to decide when you're going to do it. Because there are certain times when it's pointless to do it. And so you got to time it right. It can't be too early, because then it's back to a mess before she gets home. So I'm figuring all that out. And in the midst of cleaning, I have this thought in my head that's not from her, it's from me, as far back as I can remember. And the thought in my head was, I'm not doing this right. And it was fear. There was fear in me, like, oh, I better do this right. And not because of her, not because she has some lofty expectation, but it's just in me. My birthday is coming up soon, and so Meredith feels the same thing when it comes to buying gifts for me. I am awful to buy gifts for. I am the absolute worst, because I don't think I need anything except for the thing that you didn't get me. Then I needed that thing. And I can't believe you didn't think about getting me the thing that I didn't tell you to get for me. I am so offended that you didn't do that. And so she has had a lot of sleepless nights the past few days trying to figure all that out. But there's this feeling, and I don't know if you felt it before, of maybe I'm not doing this right, even right now. So it's in me as I'm teaching and preaching. It's like the thought is, I'm not doing this right. Am I doing this the right way? So as I studied through scripture this week, or the past few weeks, looking into this text, it's risen up in me pretty heavily. So you're not doing this right, but the scripture actually diffuses that very thought. Because for me, and maybe you can relate to this, the fear of doing things wrong actually keeps me from doing things. Do you feel that? I get paralyzed by the fear of doing it wrong, so I don't do anything. Because I'd rather not do anything wrong than to do something and to do it wrong. And so I read through this text, I'm like, golly, that's it, man. That's what I feel. I get it. I know it. And so we're going to dig into that here this morning. So maybe you can relate to that, maybe you can't, but I think we all can on some level or another. So at this point, Jesus has made his grand entrance into Jerusalem. He will be crucified just a few days later. He has marched into the temple, has flipped over tables, made a whip out of cords, gotten rid of the money exchangers, gone off on the Pharisees and scribes and the Sanhedrin. He's done all of that. They've made their way, Jesus and the disciples, back out of Jerusalem to a place called the Mount of Olives, where he gives what theologians now call the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24 and 25. And so last week we looked at it because as they're leaving, the disciples are like, look how beautiful the temple is. And Jesus is like, yeah, cool. I'm going to destroy that though. And there won't be any stones left on top of it. And the disciples are like, yeah, what? So they asked two questions, which I believe are two questions, which we talked about last week. First is, well, when is that going to happen? I need to know because that sounds like a pretty big deal. And if the temple's gone, where are we going to worship? How do we sort all this out? And the second question is, because Jesus had mentioned that he was going to go, he'd have to return, was, well, when's that going to happen? How will we know it's the end of the age? How will we know that you're coming back? And Jesus' response was, which I believe that the response was, well, I'm going to destroy the temple within 40 years. And when am I coming back? I don't know. Only the Father knows. So you just be ready for me to return. And so at that point now, Jesus is going to expound on that second answer of how do we wait for him to return. It's a core doctrine in Christian faith that Jesus will return. He will return to collect the church and to make everything right in the world again. That's an undisputed New Testament idea. So Jesus tells us, but he told us back in Matthew 24 how to do it. So first he said in verse 42, therefore stay awake, be alert, keep your eyes open, because you don't know. You don't know on which day he's coming, so stay awake. Don't fall asleep. Don't be lullabied back into the flow of the world. You need to stay awake. And then in verse 44, he says to be ready. So not just have your eyes open, but be prepared. Like it's one thing to stay awake because the thief is coming. It's a whole other thing to have your 22 by your side. It's a whole different thing to have it in your hand and to have it ready. It's different. So this is what Jesus is saying. The Son of Man is coming, so you have to be awake and be ready. And then Jesus begins a stack. He's going to stack 4 parables on top of each other. And the first one we read last week about a man who goes away and he leaves a servant in charge. And he says, basically, I want you to be like this servant. But the question he asks in verse 45, the beginning of the parable, is who is the faithful and wise servant, the one who takes care of the rest of the servants? Who is it? Who's the faithful and wise servant? And so which, for me, the question is, well, then what does it look like to be faithful and wise? Those are very cool, churchy words, but what does it mean? As I wait for Jesus to return, in this world it's so jacked up that always has been and always will be. Like, how do I live? How do I function as a Christian in a world like this? What do I do? So Jesus says, well, I want you to be faithful and to be wise. And that context is important for us as we step into these next 2 parables. And next week, we'll finish with the final parable of the sheep and the goats. But this context is crucial for us. Let me give you a few understandings about parables. We talked about it in Matthew 13. Parables are not fables, so they're not made-up fairy tales. There's no talking animals. There's no horses with wings. There's nothing like that. It's not a fairy tale. These are real-life things, real-life instances that Jesus is laying alongside theological truth. But second, this is important for us this morning, they're not allegories. So in an allegory, everything means something else. Everything is a symbol of something else. And so you go down the wormhole of figuring out what means this and why does this mean this and why did he say that and this. But the whole point of the parable is the parable. That's the point. The point is the story. The story illuminates something Jesus is trying to bring to our attention. It's so important because these 2 parables have been ripped out of their context and taught in ways that I think have really hurt people in the church. It's really made a mess of some things. So contextually, I think it's important for us to understand Jesus is expounding upon being a wise and faithful servant. That's what he's doing. And I'm going to prove it to you in the text, so it's important for us to understand. I want to read through the first parable as a whole, from verses 1 through 13. Then we're going to go back through. I want you to see it all as it goes before we get into it. So here's Matthew chapter 25, verse 1. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. You got any questions yet? Yeah, I do. Verse 2, 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. So when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." But the wise answered, saying, "Since there's not enough for you and for us, go rather to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, "Lord, open to us." But he answered, I don't know you. Watch, therefore, Jesus says, stepping out of the parable, for you know neither the day nor the hour. Make sense? A lot of questions, just from the jump, a lot of questions. Some of that is because of our context. We don't understand how weddings worked back then. So for a typical Jewish wedding, there would have been a number of stages, I think primarily 3. And so the first was the engagement or betrothal. So the groom would go to the bride's father and ask for her hand in marriage, as you should still do today. And so he does that and pays a dowry, which as a father of a daughter, I would agree, you should pay me a lot of money to marry my daughter. And so you pay the dowry, you pay the bride's price. And then at that point, once you got the yes, and then you asked the question and got a yes from the girl, the groom would go away to prepare a place for them. He built onto his father's house, or he'd build a new house, depending on the financial situation. And while he was gone, probably a year or so, the bride would just be preparing herself. Because again, they're not making a phone call. He's not posting, "Hey, I'm coming back here. Hey, let me drop this pin to you so you know when I'm coming." There's none of that. So the groom would come back at some unannounced hour, and usually at an hour when the bride did not expect it. And so in the meantime, the bride would assemble her bridal party. And she would gather her friends, and typically, according to the Talmud, the typical number of bridesmaids was 10. So she would gather 10 women who would be her bridesmaids, maybe sisters and friends. And their job was to be on the lookout for the coming of the groom, the bridegroom. But they knew he would often come in the middle of the night because it's part of the fun of it all, and so they would wait for him, and what they would have to do then is be prepared in the waiting in the middle of the night. So they'd get a sense it was coming close, and they'd carry torches. It says lamps in my translation. The word should be torches, so rags dipped in oil and lit on fire, like a real woman would carry. And so 10 of them would do that, and they would go out each night as they got close, and they would wait for him to come. And then when they would hear him coming, the 10 bridesmaids would then take the groom and his groomsmen, his party, and they'd walk down the road to the bride's house. And he would meet the bride, and then they would journey all the way back to the father's house for the wedding ceremony and the feast. So that's the background of what's happening here. This is a normal occurrence. I know it sounds crazy to us. It's a normal occurrence. So let's look back in it now. It has some context to understand what Jesus is saying. He's answering the question for us. What does it mean to be wise and faithful? How do we do it? Verse 1, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins. It says virgins, and they've made a whole ridiculous idea about that. A virgin here would have been a young maiden. That's the idea. It's not about sexual promiscuity. This parable is not about that. Think of them as bridesmaids, young girls, friends, college friends, high school friends who are her bridesmaids. There'd be like 10 bridesmaids who took their torches, lamps, and went to meet the bridegroom. Why 10? Because that was typical. That's why. Don't make it say something it doesn't say. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. Remember the context. Jesus is explaining what it means to be a wise and faithful servant. So he gives 2 parables. One's about being wise, one is about being faithful. Which one do you think this is about based on verse 2? Isn't that easy? Look how you did it. You read the Bible. It's right there. Like, don't make a mess of it. Be wise and faithful. Let me tell you how to be wise. Well, how would I know which one's about wise? Because I'll say wise in it. That's how you'll know. So what does it mean to be wise? This is how we do it. Well, when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise, they took oil with their lamps. Again, a whole other, I think, misinterpretation of this text is that the oil means the Holy Spirit, and you need to take extra Holy Spirit, which I think is just, there's no extra Holy Spirit. Story is about bridesmaids who literally didn't have oil for their torches. Let's just let it be that. Can we let it be that? That's what it's about. How are you wise? We need to take extra oil. It's preparing for what's ahead. Verse 5, as the bridegroom was delayed like he is, they all became drowsy and slept. Again, and here, there's no criticism for them falling asleep. They're waiting night after night. They fell asleep. And at midnight, there was a cry. At the darkest point of the night, there was a cry. Here he is. Come out to meet him. So then the virgins rose, the bridesmaids, they rose, they trimmed their lamps, they dipped the rag in oil, they lit it on fire. And those who were the foolish said, oh no, we're running out. Can we have some of your oil? We didn't bring enough. But the wise, because they're wise, were like, listen, if we do that, none of us are going to have enough light. So why don't you go get some? Like you didn't bring it. You were the foolish one. Go buy some oil for yourselves from the dealer. I'm sure there's a dealer up in the middle of the night. Go find one of them. And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready, the 5 of them, they went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. So now the story is the 5 met him, came back, got the bride, and they've made their way back. This door could have been gate. They've made their way into the father-in-law, the groom's father's compound through the gate, and now it is shut. Then afterward, the women, I don't know if they got the oil, if they didn't, like, oh, wait for us. And they get there, and the door is already shut. So just off topic, if you get to a wedding and the bride is walking down the aisle, do not walk in with her. You are late. You can wait for the reception. Please, the father doesn't need your help giving her away. You just wait outside. And the same thing is happening here. It's sorry, the gate has been shut. We've already begun the processional, everything. We can't now. Ed Sheeran is playing. The girls are walking down. We just can't. We can't. So that's what's happening. But then look at the next line. The master or the man replies, truly, sorry, but I don't know you. So common practice would have been to try to crash a wedding to get a free feast, especially if they're at a place where there's a walled gate around it. You know it's going to be some good fattened calves in there, and so you want to do that. And so people try to sneak in as part of the bridal party. And the way you knew they weren't part of the bridal party was because they didn't have the torch with them. And so these 5 who don't have their torch lit, they're like, I don't think you're with us. So then Jesus summarizes, therefore, just watch. It's wise to watch because you don't know when. You don't know the day or the hour. So Jesus is trying to tell us, what does it mean to be wise as we wait for his return? It means that we prepare for the bridegroom to be delayed. That's what it means. So it means you pack extra. It means you prepare your hearts that it's going to be a while. Sure, while you're pleading, come Lord Jesus, yes, we want him to, but also know this, he might not. Because this was given 2,000 years ago. That's a long time to wait. And we talked last week about the 2 extremes where we fall into. Either apathy, which means, well, I don't really care about if he's coming or not, which means you don't provide the oil. You don't bring any extra oil because you don't really care. You're not thinking that far ahead. Or the obsession phase of it where everything is a sign. Every war is a sign. Every red moon is a sign. Everything's a sign. You saw a red cow one time and you thought that meant Jesus would be coming back. And so you've seen all of that. And so what that means is you don't bring extra oil because you think he's coming soon, but what if he's not? So what does it mean to be wise? What it means is right now, get it in your heads that he might not come in your lifetime. It might not be you. We might not be that generation. What does it mean to be wise is to understand it's going to be longer than you think that it is, which is how husbands have trained themselves for years to wait for their wives to get ready. Pack a snack. It's going to be a while. Get a granola bar or protein bar and just wait. Like you can't hurry that. So let's just wait. This is what he's saying. Be wise. It's going to be a while, and there's going to be ups and downs, and you might fall asleep. Be prepared for it to take longer than you think that it is. So what does it mean to be wise? It means to pack extra oil. It's going to be a while. So then Jesus gives a second parable, and I'm curious. I wonder what he's going to say if it's wise or faithful. I wonder how he's going to answer this one. Let's read verses 14 through 30. So it'll be like this. Kingdom of heaven will be like a man who goes on a journey and calls his servants and gives to them and trusts to them his property. To one he'll give 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each of them according to their ability. And then he went away. And he who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded or invested with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more, and the one who had received the 1 talent, though, he went. And he dug in the ground and he hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, after what? Yeah. So be wise, yes? It's going to be a long time. After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you gave me 5. Here, I've made 5 more. And his master said, well done. Good and what's the word? Man, I wonder, do you guys have any idea? What's Jesus talking about? Being a wise or faithful servant? Which one in this parable? You did it again, 2 for 2. Listen, I want you to know, you can read the Bible. It's right there. Don't make it more complicated than it is. Because the question is, how do I know to be wise and faithful? Jesus is like, well, I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you some stories. I'll do one about wise and one about faithful. What does it mean to be faithful here? Pay attention. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been, there it is again, faithful over a little, and I'm going to give you more. I'm going to set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Also, when he who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you gave me 2. I've made 2 more. His master said to him, well done, good, and there it is again, faithful servant. You've been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter the joy of your master. Do you see the pattern? The 2 and then the 1. It's going to happen again. The 1's going to screw up everything. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you were a hard man. I knew you were immovable. I knew you were kind of a jerk. You reap where you don't sow. You gather where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid. So I went and I hid your talent in the ground. So here, I didn't lose any of it. You can have back what you gave me. But his master answered, you wicked and slothful servant. What happened to good and faithful? Where'd that go? You know that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have no seed? That's what you said? Well, then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. At least then I would have gotten 0.01% on my investment in my savings account. And my coming, I would have received what was my own with interest. So then he tells his other servants, take it from him. Take that money from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he does have will be taken away. Oh, and cast the worthless servant, goodness, into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So if the parable of the bridesmaids is how we're wise, prepare for the long journey ahead. It's going to be a while. Prepare your heart. Get it wrapped up in your mind. It's going to be a while. This is about being faithful. Well, then how do we be faithful? Well, let's see what the parable says. Let's go back to verse 14. It's going to be a man who goes on a journey. He calls his servants and entrusts to them, hands over to them, his property. To the one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, another 1, each according to his ability, and then he went away. So here's where it gets confusing for us. So we read the word talent, and we have an idea of what a talent is because that's an English word. But this is not an English word. This is a Greek word. Anybody have something different besides talent in your Bible? On the page that we were just reading together, on that one. No? Anybody have bag of gold? Did you say bag of gold? Okay. Bag of gold, which that's actually the translation of the word. So a talent is 100 pounds of gold. The master gives 5, 2, and 1. So based on today's rate, ever changing, a pound of gold today is worth $23,000. No, it's Sunday. You don't want to do math today, so I've done it for you. So 1 talent, 100 pounds, is $2.3 million. Okay, we read it like, oh, cool, like a bag of gold doubloons from a pirate. Awesome. No. The man with 5 talents got $11.5 million from the man. A lot of money or a little bit of money? Yeah, a lot. If you said a little, you feel free to tithe later today if that's a little bit to you. 2 talents, $4.6 million. 1 talent, $2.3 million. Yes? This man is leaving an extraordinary amount of money behind for his servants. He entrusts it to them. So let's read it again. And then verse 15, but how did he decide who gets what? According to verse 15, according to their ability. Now, there's nothing that says he did it all at the same time and they knew what they were getting, but listen, if somebody gives you $2.3 million and you're mad you didn't get as much as somebody else, we need to talk. We need to talk about it. One to get 5, 1, 2, but according to his ability. There was a system by which he handed these things out. Verse 16, he who had received more, or the 5, went at once and traded with them. So don't think stock market. Think buying companies, buying properties, buying up things to invest to make more money. For a long time, he invested this money to get more money. He invested this $11.5 million. I don't know, I don't speak from experience, but I would imagine it takes a while to invest that much money. So he did. Verse 17, so also the one who had 2, he did the same thing, and he made 2 talents more. They've doubled the investment of the master, of the man. But he who received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. There's a pattern. 2 are good, 1 is bad. Here it is again. He digs and hides the money. Now, after a long time, it's important, for a long time, the ones with 5 and 2 had been investing over and over and over again. You have to if you're going to yield that kind of return on your investment. They've been working this system. They've been buying up property. They've been planting seed. They've been doing all sorts of things. And he came back to settle accounts. And the one who received 5 talents came forward, bringing the 5, saying, look, you gave me 5. I made 5 more. And the master says, well done, which is like praising. That's amazing. Well, that's awesome. You're good and you're faithful. You've done what I asked you to do. You've been faithful over a little. Good gracious. If 11.5 million is a little, I'd love to work for this man. I would love to work for him. Not that our elders are bad to work for. I'm just saying that would be a different kind of setup for me and my family. 11.5, it's a little, so I'm going to set you over more. Then the moment 2 comes. He says in the end of verse 21, enter into the joy. I'm overjoyed. This is amazing. Come celebrate with me. This is amazing. Then the one who had 2 does the same thing. Master, you gave me 2, I've made 2 more. And the master says the exact same thing. He's not like, well, listen, the guy before you made 5, so, yeah, okay. It's amazing, well done. You've been faithful over a little, I'm gonna set you over much. Now come, let's celebrate. Fine, get some of my joy, you did it. I knew you could do it, you did it. And then, after that, we find the next servant, but I want to stop here. So imagine you're sitting here as the disciples and you're hearing this story being told to you by Jesus, and he's doing it on purpose. Jesus finishes with the first 2 men and this man, the master. Based on what we know so far, what do you know about the master? We know he's generous, like millions of dollars, because he goes on some, a Greek cruise, Roman cruise somewhere in Rome, and he comes back after a long time, but he gave a bunch of money. He's generous. He sounds kind. He's loving, and he's joyful. Wouldn't you love to have a boss like that? Wouldn't that be amazing? A generous, kind, loving, and joyful boss. But listen, he also has expectations. He has the expectation that if he gives you something, you will do something with it. You're going to invest it. But what we've learned about this man is that, good gracious, he sounds amazing. Verse 24, he who had received the 1 talent came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a jerk of a man. Now, what in the parable leads, do you think that? Do we have any indication that he's hard and immovable and has such high, lofty expectations? Do we get that from the story? No. So somewhere, this man had built into his mind, this is what the master is like. And why? Well, he tells you why. Because you reap where you don't sow, and you gather where you scatter no seed, which is a euphemism for saying everything you touch turns to gold. You seem like the kind of man who would want everything I touch to turn into gold too, and I can't do that. I can't do that. I think I can relate to him. It's the fear of like, I don't know that I'm doing it right though. So I'd rather just do this, that at least that way I don't lose your money. I'd rather just not. And he's saying, this is what I thought about you because of what I've seen in you. And he completely neglected the rest of what he's seen. The dude gave you $2.3 million. And you're like, God, what a jerk. I can't believe he would do that to me. And he says, I was afraid. So I took your talent and I hid it in the ground. It's been a long time. 5 and 2 talent men have been working for this long time to yield a return. The understanding here is that the next day, this man goes and digs and buries the talent. So while the 5 and 2 talent men are working their fingers to the bone to get an investment, this guy's like, I don't know. I'll give it back when he comes. So he says, I'm afraid. And so initially the thought was, I want to teach on how we have, what we think about God's the most important thing about us. And if you get that thing wrong, you're going to really screw it all up. But it's true. But I want you to see how Jesus tells us that the master responds in verse 26. Yeah? You wicked and slothful servant. And you're like, goodness, man, have some compassion. He was afraid. Like he's not a go-getter like the 5 and 2 guys. He's a little more low-key. He's kind of introverted. He's not a good salesman. Like, dude, let him be. He might be a good manager. Let him be. But he said, no, you're wicked and you're slothful. And then he says, here's why. Oh, you thought that you were afraid because you think I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have no seed. Well, if you were truly afraid and you knew that about me, verse 27, then you would have put my money in the bank at least. And so the master calls the man out. No. It's not that you're afraid. It's that you're evil and lazy. That's what's wrong with you. And I was reading that like, good, that's what's wrong with me? I thought it was because I had such a healthy fear of God, and that's why I'm afraid to use what he's given me. And God's like, no, that's not it. Because if you actually had a fear of me, you'd use it. You'd at least invest it a little bit. The problem is you're lazy with what I've given you. And I was like, I still don't think so. Then verse 28, so take the talent from this man and give it to the man who has 10 talents. Hold on. So now the master not just gave the man 5 talents, now he's saying, oh, and you get the extra, and you get to keep what I gave you and what you made and this other man's talent. Good. What a generous man this is. Do you see it? I don't even want it back. You can have his. For everyone who has, more will be given. And those who have not, even that will be taken away. And then this man now is worthless. Cast him out, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jesus is answering the question, what does it mean to be wise? It means to pack extra oil. What does it mean to be faithful? It means to invest whatever it is God's given you and not to bury it and sit on it. You are the light set on a hill that might be shown before men, not to hide it under a basket. So this very parable that Jesus is telling the disciples applies to us too. You know, it's been 2,000 years and we're still waiting. We're still waiting. And the danger, again, is that we fall into one of those two traps from last week. Either we get apathetic. Well, I know you gave me $2.3 million, but I don't even know if you're going to return, so I'm just going to put it here in case you do. Or we have the wrong idea, the obsession with him coming back, so I better bury it now so I don't lose it before he comes back. We fall into these two extremes, and that's not the biblical way to handle it. So we need to be wise, but also we need to be faithful. So what does it mean to be faithful? If being wise means we need to be prepared to wait, what does it mean to be faithful? It means you don't waste what God's given you. Don't waste your life. Don't waste it. I think for many of us, specifically if you grew up in the church, you built a defensive mentality around the gospel work of Jesus, around what God's done in you. And so you've learned how to abstain from certain sins. And so you even think, hey, when Jesus returns, man, you don't want to be found dancing or smoking or chewing or going with girls who do. You don't want to be doing that. Like you don't want to be found watching The Simpsons when Jesus returns. So you better be watching McGee and Me or something Christian. You better be doing that. That's what we were taught, which leads us to being one-talent people, doesn't it? Man, I don't want to screw this thing up. So I'm gonna hoard all of it. I'm gonna keep it all in so it doesn't get out into the world and cause some real problems. But this parable is teaching us actually Jesus doesn't want that from us. He's entrusted us with something that we might actually use it. We might actually do something with it. Like the servants in the parables, we've been generously given something by our master. We've been given life and breath and gifts and abilities. You've been given neighbors and a job and a cubicle and a truck to drive. You've been given kids. You've been given a church. You've been given singleness. You've been given a disease. You've been given a firing from your job. You've been given a tough marriage. You've been given a great marriage. You've been given gifts. Why? That we bury it so it's protected for when he comes back? No, that we invest it, that it might yield a return. And it's all been given to you and to me based on ability. And listen, that's not a shot at one-talent people. That's a gift. You're like, well, I should get 5 talents. Ooh, you can't handle the 5 talents. That would be cruel of him. No, you were wired for the one. He gave you the one, which it means this: if you have it, God trusts you with it. That's what it means. It also means if you have it, he trusts you with it, not me with it. Like sometimes people are like, hey, I wish you could come talk to so-and-so at my work. Well, I don't work at your work. You do. I wish you could come teach these people. I don't know those people. You do. He gave you them. Well, I wish you could talk to my husband. I'm not married to your husband. I wish you, well, okay. He's given us things, he's entrusted them, but this is not different. This is how God has always worked. Genesis 1:28, God creates Adam and Eve, and God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. You ever stop to think about this? God literally just breathed humanity. It feels like he could have just done that over and over and over again. Like, why don't you set up some breath assembly line, God, and you make more people? Then you poke their belly buttons, and then you send them down. Why don't we just do that? And fill the earth and subdue it. Like, why don't you do that? You created the animals. Why don't you just make trees that don't have to be trimmed? But in perfection, God's like, no, I want to partner with you to do it. Yeah, I can. But the way of the kingdom is that you, Adam and Eve, humanity, you do it with me. I want you to do it. Later on, God would tell Adam to work the garden and to keep it. I want you to take Eden. I want you to cultivate all of this, other places in the world. I want you to do it. And I want you to pay attention. All of that happens before the fall, before their sin, which means this: hard work is not a result of sin, it's a gift, even imperfection. I want you to hear it again. Work is not a curse, it's a blessing in the perfect garden. And look at our parable. Jesus says, you've been faithful, or the master says, you've been faithful over a little. Now the illusion then is that Jesus would say that to us, well done. I gave you this there. Now I'm going to set you over more things here, which alludes to the fact that there might be work in heaven. Sorry to ruin that for some of you. But you're fat, diapered babies with wings. What if this? What if God gave you an ability now that you'll actually use in the new heavens and the new earth? What if? What if God knows what he's doing, and that he's invited us into this? And now because of the fall, what if he sent Jesus who died on the cross and rose from the dead, and then he invites you and me to participate in the ministry of reconciliation? What if it's you and me? No, I don't. Listen, it's been from Genesis to Revelation how he's always worked. We should not be surprised by it. So then the question is, what is it that we've been given? Let me say this first. I don't think this parable is talking about the gift of salvation, because we don't get salvation based on ability. We also don't get varying degrees of salvation. Like, well, you get the 5-point salvation, you get the 2-point. No. We all get it. So what's he talking about? He's talking about a gift that he's given. Paul would say it this way in Ephesians 2. It's by grace you've been saved through faith. Absolutely. It's not of your own doing. It's a gift of God, not a result of works or ability, so that no one may boast. But we are his workmanship. Word is poema. It means you're his poem. Poetry is the only art form that has no rules to it. You want to know why something that's written is called a poem? It's because the poet said it's a poem. That's why. There's no rules to it. So what Paul is telling us is that we've been created exactly how we've been created, on purpose. There were no rules. When God gave you the talents and abilities he gave you, when he gave you the relationships that he gave to you, when he gave all that to you, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't because he's like, well, I would do more, only I'm kind of restricted. No, he meant to. And why? For good works. Because the master, who's generous and kind and loving and joyful, also has expectation that we will work, that we'll do something with it. But you're like, I don't know, how will I ever know what the works are that I'm supposed to do? Well, God prepared them beforehand, that all you have to do is walk in them. So pay attention to the timeline that Paul is giving us of how we handle this exercise of partnering with God for the redemption of the world. It's not that God created you and was like, I'm gonna make this guy, I'm gonna make him love football, and I'm gonna make him love high schoolers, and then I'm gonna make him okay at teaching history, and then I'm gonna make him a football coach. That's what I'm gonna do. He's like, oh man, if I do that, then I gotta create a sport called football, and I gotta create fields and people who want to play it, and then I gotta create these adolescent boys who want to bash their heads against other people's heads, and then, right, that's not it. What he did was, he created a work. He created works and was like, now I need somebody to coach these young men. Oh, I know, I'll make this one. And then he fashioned you, or whoever, he fashioned the football coach specifically to coach that group of young men at that season, at that school for that period of time. Do you see it? That's it. All that coach has to do is walk in them. Doesn't have to figure out where you're supposed to go next and what you're supposed to do. Mama, you don't have to figure out anything with your kids. He gave you to your kids. He's like, I'm gonna create these kids, and I'm gonna make them so they're a little hyper, and they seem to really like their dad more than like their mom, and I'm gonna make them really like that because their dad's also hyper, so I'm gonna create them. But I'm gonna make them so they're a little bit soft and sensitive, but also kind of strong. Then he's like, and then, I got this woman in mind for them. And she's fashioned in such a way, I'm gonna make her this way. I'm gonna give her this upbringing that she might be formed to be able to parent these kids at this time in this season. Do you see it? So how are we faithful? Goodness, we just walk in the works God prepared for us to do. And we don't bury it, we don't hide it. We don't walk in fear, we walk towards the joy of the master. Do you see him? The master's like, oh, you did it. You did the thing I made you to do. This is amazing. Come be joyful with me. Come love what it is that you're doing. So what if you're like, well, I don't have any gifts, man. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Well, I would say you do. But then I would say Paul says this in Colossians chapter 3 when he talks about whatever we're doing to work as unto the Lord, not as unto men. Here's the context of that, verse 18. Wives, submit to your husbands. We okay? Well, I don't really know. I don't really have a purpose. Listen to me. The way you love your husband is an eternity-shaping thing. Because when a husband feels respected in his home, he's going to crush raising your kids. Well, what do I do, though? Like, I've got this, I want to go to Africa and hold babies. Good. Let's start here. Let's start here as unto the Lord. Husbands, love your wives. How are we doing? No, man, but I got this plan. I'm going to plant this church. I'm going to adopt all these babies. I'm going to save the world. Cool. Start by loving your wife. Let's do that. No, man, I'm a 5-talent dude. Well, then maybe your wife is worth the 5 talents. Love your wives. Don't be harsh with them. Kids, coming for you. Obey your parents and everything. No, but I got a vision for my life. I'm going to play professional football, and I'm going to create a charity that helps underprivileged kids in poor, impoverished neighborhoods. Cool. Listen, right now, why don't you just obey mama and daddy? Let's do that. Let's be faithful in the little things. Let's do that. Let's do our homework. Let's study for tests. Let's go to practice. Let's do that kind of thing. Fathers, goodness, don't provoke your kids, which sounds easy until you have them. And then you're like, yeah, man, right? Lest they become, okay. What do you have in front of you? Slaves, those of you who have jobs, obey your masters, obey your bosses. Not just trying to get lip service, not doing it in a way that he sees you, but instead, not as people pleasers, but it continues in verse 22, instead with a sincere heart. What if you actually cared about your boss? I know it's crazy. Just saying, while you're looking to heaven for new signs that Jesus is coming, Jesus is like, oh yeah, I just want you to do your job well. Can you just do that? And this is an aside. I think Christians should be the best at whatever job they're doing. Because you've been given that ability by the Lord. You should be killing it. You should be working to get better. You should be the one the boss is like, I don't know if anybody else will get it done, but he's going to get it done. So then Paul continues in verse 23. So whatever you do, work heartily as unto the Lord and not for men, because you know that from the Lord you're going to receive an inheritance as your reward. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've invested. Look what I have for you, because you're serving the Lord Jesus Christ. Again, how are we wise? We prepare our hearts. It's going to be a while. So whatever it is you have to do with all of your might, understand it's going to be a while. This job you're in, I know you think it's just temporary, but you've been there for 7.5 years. Can we stop thinking that now? Like it's not. God called you there for such a time as this. You are there. It's you with those people, with your story and your background and your understanding and all the gifts he's given. He gave it to you. And he said, here, $2.3 million. What are you going to do with it? But what I love about this is that it forces us to think through following Jesus, not as being defensive, but as being offensive. In Matthew 16, Jesus, remember this, he tells Peter, it's you, man. I'm going to build my church upon the truth you just said about me being the Messiah. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Now listen, I'm no war expert. And I've watched some movies and I've seen Saving Private Ryan, but I've never seen the front lines of a military going to war carrying aluminum fence gates. I've never seen it. Like, I'm going to get you with my gate. Ah! Gates are not offensive weapons, they are defensive weapons. So pay attention. It's not that the evil one, it's not that the enemy is coming after us, it's that we're going after him. And it doesn't stand a chance against faithful and wise servants in the day of the Lord. It doesn't stand a chance. You know when it does stand a chance? When you're like, the pastor will do it. No, man, you'll do it. You. with the talents God's given you, the abilities God's given you, the gift and the time and the resources he's given to you. You do it. And the promise is that the enemy will not be able to withstand you in your cubicle with that guy that you can't stand. The enemy's like, oh, shoot, he works with him now? Why? Yeah, man, because we're taking it back. So what do we do while we wait for the coming of Jesus? Do we cower in fear? Do we hide? No. We bring extra oil because it's going to be a while, and then we get to work with whatever it is that God's given us to do. And the gift is joy on the other side of it. Let me say this to you as well. As Christians, sometimes we're taught that humility means you can't say you're good at something. What a slap in the face to a God who gave you a gift. If you're good at something because God gave you that gift, then you better know you're good at it, and you better keep working to get even better at that thing. Things shifted for me when I started to realize, oh no, God gave me a gift, man. And I can't bury it in the ground of false humility. No, I need to invest this thing for the glory of God and the good of his people. So you want to find joy, this is how we do it. Every week, we do our offering prayer and we pray over our offering. But I think sometimes we don't pay attention to the words that we're saying. And so we're going to collect offering now as a response. And listen, it's not me saying, listen, if you have $2.3 million, I'm going to guilt you into giving. It's not about that. It's the words, right? The giving, the offering, the generosity is in response to what God has given to us. And here's what we learned this morning. Everything you have is a gift from him. So I'm going to read this prayer. I just want you to listen to it. I just want you to take it all in. And then we're going to give a benediction. I'm going to dismiss you. That's the response. Commit to generosity and then go do it. So here's our prayer. Loving God, just listen to it. I come to you in thanksgiving. Are you thankful this morning for what he's given you? The breath in your lungs, the house with heat or maybe with not, your marriage or your singleness, your kids or your lack thereof. This is the gift. What is the thanksgiving? Knowing that everything I have, all that I am, is from you. So because of that, I offer my gifts of my time and my breath, my ability, the possessions I have. And I'm going to give my mind, I'm going to think about it to you as an actual true act of faith that reflects my love for you and my neighbor. But I need your help, God. I need you to help me because I want to bury it. I want to lower my garage door when I get home and not talk to another soul until I get to work the next morning. So I need your help to reach out to others in the same way that you reached out to me. I'm going to ask this in the powerful name of Jesus, your son, the one who sits and is reigning forever and ever, the one who expects a return on his investment. Does that feel different? This is what it means to be a faithful and a wise servant. Would you stand? I'm going to pray and give us a benediction that we might go forth as wise and faithful servants. So as you go, may you be people who've stocked up on oil. It's going to be a while. This is a long journey home. And maybe you be faithful with whatever God's given to you based on your ability. Here's what it means. He trusts you to do what he gave you to do. He's created you to do it. May grace and peace be with you. We love you. Have a great week. You are dismissed.